We'll look to kick it off. So I'd just like to obviously welcome everyone tonight. Really excited to get you all in for our obviously best nutrition practices. I'm Luke Bourgeois, director of high performance at Voyager Tennis Academy. I lead our Olympic Park program. So I'm really excited to have Jason Oyi from Precision.
Thanks for having me.
Jason is really excited to have Jason on. Jason, if you don't know, is our tennis extraordinaire at Precision. Our lead exercise physiologist, takes care of all our tennis athletes. And again, knows a lot about the sport himself. He's also a tennis coach. So Jason, welcome tonight.
No, thank you. And just following on from that, so I run the tennis program at Precision. Thanks, Vera, for those kind words. So what we do is that we provide a lot of the physical training with a lot of the tennis players that come in, especially with all the Voyager players. But it kind of brings me to today, which is about making sure that they're they're eating well, they're fueling their bodies really well, which is unfortunately something that we see is probably underdeveloped from that side. And I think, Luke, you probably see that quite a lot, and when you see them on court, and kind of brings us to this seminar, and hopefully it becomes informative and really helpful to all the parents and the kids that are listening in today.
Yeah, 100%. And that sort of, I guess, to introduce Atlanta, obviously Atlanta Miall. She's the who we're all here to see tonight, which is just really excited, because as Jason said, it's something that we see people put so much time and effort into their training. They don't understand the importance of this. And I guess obviously Atlanta, she's an accredited practicing dietitian, and again the head of nutrition and dietetics at Precision. Atlanta has over 8 years experience in sports nutrition, working with a whole wide sort of range of athletes in different sports, and has also been published as well, which is amazing. And again, Atlanta was a junior tennis player, where she's obviously got a great love for the game and plays socially. So Atlanta, welcome tonight. Really excited to have you on.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Jay. So I guess I'll get us started. So as Luke and Jay said, my name is Atlanta Miall. So I'm the head dietitian at Precision Athletica. And today I'm going to be taking you through tennis and nutrition and how nutrition affects your performance. So we want to keep this session as interactive as possible. So if you've got any questions throughout, just pop those into the comments box, and Luke and Jace are going to field them and ask them to me as we go. We don't just want you kind of sitting watching me talk for 40 minutes, but let's get started. So for those of you who don't know much about Precision Athletica, we're a high performance training center for elite and professional athletes, as well as up and coming athletes as well. And it's not just about your training or your talent, but it's the whole focus of putting that mind flow, that physicality, the recovery and the fuel in as well. So today, obviously, we're mainly going to be talking about the fuel and recovery aspects. A brief outline of what we're going to touch on today. So obviously the importance of diet for your health and performance, energy and macronutrients, the go foods, so carbohydrates, the grow foods, so proteins, pre, during and post training and competition nutrition, as well as hydration and cooling strategies, and finishing off a little bit on supplements. So why is diet important? Diet provides the energy and nutrients we need for training. It enhances our training adaptations for recovery, as well as helping us achieve optimal body weight and composition, and achieving optimal hydration as well. So all these things are extremely important to consider when being a professional athlete or trying to get to that next stage in your sport as well. So what does a poor diet look like? This involves under or overeating. This can lead to weight gain or a lack of energy. And also if you're doing things like eating a lot of foods with poor nutritional profiles, so really high fat, high sugar, lots of takeaways, those sorts of things. And what can this do to you? Well, in the short term, this can lead to stress, tiredness, and limit our capacity to perform and make decisions. And in the long term, it can have more serious complications. So things like obesity, heart disease, diabetes, but in terms of sport, particularly something called relative energy deficiency in sport. So something where, you know, your body composition may be going up, you may lose your menarche, or you may lose your menstrual cycle. And again, it will really start affecting your performance. So really putting a focus on that nutrition is key to becoming, you know, the best athlete you can be. A lot of you may have seen this circle in school or maybe PE, but it refers to the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, which incorporates the 5 food groups, those being grains and cereals, vegetables, fruit, dairy, and meat and alternatives. So what do you need to be getting in every day? Now, this is the base of what you need to be getting in every day as part of a healthy and balanced diet. So I'm just going to put it out there, 14 to 18-year-olds will do the serves from there. Girls need roughly 5 serves a day, boys 5.5. Veggies providing a lot of really beneficial antioxidants. So antioxidants really important for reducing inflammation, but providing things like vitamins and minerals, things like magnesium, which is really important for our muscle contraction as well. Fruit, we need 2 serves of fruit a day. And again, providing a lot of things like antioxidants like vitamin C, again, preventing us from getting sick, those sorts of things. Whole grains, we need 7 serves per day. Whole grains really important for our low GI carbohydrates and our fuel, which we're going to touch on a little bit more later, but a serve equating to roughly 1 slice of bread or half a cup of cooked rice. Lean meat or alternatives are really important for that protein aspect. Protein really important for our muscle development and adaptation, but also lean meat and alternatives really important for things like iron, so oxygen transportation throughout the body, as well as zinc, which is very beneficial for our immune health. Dairy products and alternatives, we roughly need 3.5 serves per day, so a serve equating to 1 cup of milk or 2 slices of cheese. And if you're not having regular dairy, so maybe you're having almond, oat, macadamia milk, just make sure that it is fortified with calcium. Again, a lot of you are younger athletes, you're still growing and you really need that calcium to strengthen up your bones as well.
I think, Atlanta, to jump in here as well, probably just to confirm as well, I think it's, I know personally for me being a former professional player, it was something that I like. These little 1%ers we're talking about here is can make such a huge impact. Because I remember I did some testing and then looked at my diet, nutrition, cut some things out, a lot of the sugars that I was taking, and it actually led to a huge increase in my athletic performance. I actually had my endurance go up, my testing, all based around this, because I know that sort of old expression, you are what you eat. It's really such a big factor, because I know, and I guess probably going into that, I mean, I'm sure you could agree with those statements.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess for any individual, it's also about timing of those nutrients and those foods. So you'll see today, I will actually sometimes suggest having some foods higher in sugar, but it's having it at the right time where your body can actually utilize that energy and get the most out of it. Otherwise, definitely making sure we're getting a nutritionally adequate diet, which means that you're getting all the vitamins and minerals you need and the macronutrients at periodized times. So again, we'll dive further into that, but this is what your diet could look like on a basic plate. And this is the minimum that any of you need, because obviously the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating is based off general 14 to 18-year-olds. They're not doing, yes, they're doing probably some physical activity, but not the high levels of activity that you guys are doing. So this is the absolute minimum you need. And further throughout the presentation, we'll show you how you need to adapt your carbohydrate intake, your protein intake, depending on how much you're training as well. Macronutrients we're going to touch on: carbohydrates, protein, and fats. Mainly going to be talking about carbohydrates and protein, because carbohydrates and protein have the biggest difference, and will create the biggest difference for our fueling and refueling purposes as athletes. Roughly what that should look like, and we'll go into this in more detail, but at a minimum, 1 to 2 portions per meal of carbs, so a handful, 1 portion of protein on your plate, which is a palm size, and then fat, we need 1 portion per meal, which is thumb size. So let's dive more into carbohydrates, which are extremely important for any athlete. So they are our primary energy source. This is what you're going to be drawing upon in your tennis match. It supports our training intensity and quality, sustains concentration and decision-making, as well as supporting our skill execution. So training with high carbohydrate stores via good meal choices and meal timing ensures training intensity and quality is sustainable throughout the session. And poor fueling can lead to fatigue, poor skill execution, and poor recovery. So if you're not getting the right types of foods in, which is exactly what Luke was saying, just, doing some of those tests and making sure he's getting the right foods in at the right times makes you, 100% better at playing. Carbohydrate sources, obviously, our grains, our legumes, our starchy veg, like sweet potato and potato. But we do have two different types of carbohydrates. And this is what I was saying, that, for some of you may even be prescribed a higher sugar source of carbohydrate at a certain stage. And we'll dive into this now. So we have our fast release carbs, known as our high GI carbs, and our slow release carbs, known as our low GI carbs. So we have our fast release carbs, so high GI, digested and absorbed rapidly, creating a fast increase in our blood sugar and energy levels. So if you look to that graph, you can see the red line there. We're getting that really quick peak in blood sugar, which is when we need energy right then and there. So this is just before a game, maybe just before training, if you haven't had time to have something more substantial, just to give you that quick energy boost. And again, these are foods that normally no dietitian would recommend, but there is a time and a place for athletes. So things like lollies, maybe some sports gels, sports drinks, white bread sandwich with some honey or jam, or maybe even just a ripe banana. The riper the banana is, the higher in sugar it is.
Yeah, and it's probably just, if I could jump in on there, I know it's...
Of course.
I spent a fair bit of time with Roger Federer, and I remember Roger was playing a match. And I actually hadn't seen it before, but he actually asked for a Coke and sent off to get a Coke. And there he was, pops the Coke, has it. And I was just thinking, oh my gosh, imagine all the kids around the world and what they're thinking about this. But I asked him about it after the match. He goes, well, I knew the Coke was going to give me a 5-minute sugar hit. And he goes, but it was a tiebreaker in the third set. I only had 5 minutes left. So it's where you can start seeing the timing, what you were talking about there earlier, because might sort of be a question, because I know my son, who often makes a cameo on these things here. So if you do see him pop in tonight, it's what he loves to do. But if he saw Cocoa Pops on there, he'd be sort of, all over it. But it's one of the questions there from Catherine. What I think is probably a really good thing is how do you manage fussy eaters and sports diet requirements? Because I think that sometimes what we see a lot is and hear that a lot of again, we're talking about this wide range of food that we need to sort of have. And what would you how would you answer that one there?
Definitely. I guess that's when someone needs to come in for a consultation, so we can really look through the different food choices and availability, but working from what they already eat, but also trying to push that point as well of getting them to try new foods and how these new foods can affect their sports performance as well. So trying to kind of always draw back on, okay, where do you want to be with your tennis? And then also trying those new foods, say, okay. And also sometimes if they hear it from someone else, so who's not mum or dad, they'll be more likely to try it. And I have had that success, luckily, with some of my adolescent athletes, is that they just need to hear it from someone else and they're willing to at least try it and give it a go.
Helps be an expert, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So Atlanta, with tennis, do you often prescribe maybe some things during change of ends? Like you see a lot of players, and especially in the Australian climate, it can be really hot. And the game, they can have long rallies, and then in between games, they're sitting down. Is there a process that you like to encourage for them to do during that change of ends type of period?
Yeah, definitely. So we will dive into that a little bit more later. And it depends on, so change of ends, again, going back to our fast release carbohydrates. So you don't want to be having the slow release carbs during a match, because you need that quick released energy. Slow release carbs are really gradually digested, and it's not going to give you that energy that you need then and there. Slow release carbs is what we need at every other meal generally.
So slow release is more so as a match day preparation, getting it ready before before you start out, have that all set.
Exactly. So yeah, once we're the changing events, and again, obviously hydration, which we will touch on a little bit later, making sure that they're, perhaps even mixing the two. So sometimes we do suggest sports drinks, which we've got here. So things that have electrolytes, fluid, and obviously some carbohydrate in them as well. And it depends on tolerance. Like some players just feel like they really can't eat anything during a match. So if we can get those liquid sources in, it's a lot better. And at least that's something that we know that they can have.
Yeah, cool.
Anything else?
No, let's move on. It's good.
So slow release carbs. So again, digested and absorbed really slowly and giving us that nice gradual release in blood sugar and energy levels. So if you look at that yellow line, that nice slow release in energy and also that slow decline. So what we can get those fast releases, a really big spike of energy, but we will decline really quickly as well. And that's why you need to keep topping them up during a match. But throughout the day, that's not the source of food, or sorry, the source of carbohydrate that we're wanting to draw upon. So things like muesli, porridge, whole grain bread, pasta, brown rice, yogurt and fruit.
I'd probably throw it out there as well. If you go back to that slide.
Yep.
Again, speaking of Federer, there is one thing on there that he eats before every single match. Maybe there's a little interactive sort of thing we can throw in there. If anyone wants to actually have a quick guess, he literally eats it at the same time before every single match, and it's on there. So I don't know if anyone wants to have a quick crack and see who can be the first person to get it right. It's literally the only thing he eats. I think it's so boring, but obviously he's found a way to maximize exactly what it is that he needs to do.
Yes, pasta. You're all nailing it.
Plain pasta with no sauce. It's literally, obviously when you're the greatest, he's figured out what works best. So it's the same thing like clockwork. That was one of the key things too as tennis players, because we don't know what time that you're actually playing. Often you might be third match on after 10, so you got to try to time it. So it really is a key thing there. But it is the pasta, the plain pasta, no sauce.
Definitely. And that's a great kind of pre-match meal, obviously providing those slow release carbs we need. And we'll talk more about timing of that, but roughly 2 to 4 hours before a match is when you're wanting those slow release carbs, and then with a top up of some fast release. But yes, Roger Federer loves his pasta, well-known fact, and he knows that it works for him. Like familiar foods on match day and during tournaments, you do not want to be trying a new food, like a new gel that your mate's having because he said it makes him play really well. This is stuff to try during your training, not during match day. You do not try anything new. You kind of keep to the routine and to make sure that everything's digesting well, and also that you just know the foods that you're having and you've got that routine in place.
You're right. He is the face of Barilla.
Okay, so matching carbohydrates to our training demands. So obviously you're going to have some different training days, some days being a little bit more intense than others. But carbohydrates, unfortunately, are often neglected due to the perception that they will cause weight gain. And low carbohydrate diet can cause fatigue, lack of focus, and poor performance. So you definitely don't want to be cutting out carbs just because you feel like you need to lose weight, or if you are thinking more about your body composition, again, that's when you go see a dietitian who can help you make sure that you're getting the right foods in at the right times. But perhaps we still have that weight loss goal if that is necessary as well, or that body composition goal. So for light activity, we aim for 1 to 2 serves. Medium activity, we aim to 2 to 3 serves, and heavy activity, we aim for 3 serves. So light activity would just be kind of like 30 to 60 minute session, maybe more focused on skill and stretching rather than anything too intense. Medium activity, probably some intense 1 to 2 hours on the court, and heavy activity would be probably like 2 hours plus. So
can I jump in there again? Sorry, Atlanta, can you go back to that slide? Because again, for those that don't know our academy program at Olympic Park, we've obviously have a partnership program where the kids are really on that path. They're all in. They're really looking. I know. Obviously, Vera Lai, who's in here tonight. Ethan, one of her, like he was literally the consummate professional. And I know he did actually go and see one of the nutritionists as well. Like every time we'd come out, you would see his lunch, and you could see obviously we burn a lot of calories. We're burning bright, burning the fuel. He was one of the best that I've seen with having every sort of making sure he's snacking throughout the day, making sure he's fueling really well. Because often I see the kids come out, we're about to have a 3-hour session on court, then obviously go across to the gym like what we did today for an hour. And some of them are going on a Vegemite sandwich. And compare that to the others that have literally every food group, making sure that they can get through. Because again, when you're burning energy that bright and you're not replacing it, something's got to give. So I think it's a really key thing that I'm so strong on, and that's why I'm so glad to see a lot of our our athletes in here tonight, because if that's one thing to take away, it's actually how to really properly fuel. It's so critical, because
definitely. And mirroring your diet should mirror your training and how much you're putting into your training. So, on rest days, yes, you will eat a little bit less, and on a high training day, you will eat more. And this is what we really want to make sure, that you're getting the appropriate fuel, you're refueling, and you're getting that recovery happening straight away as well.
He was always snacking. He's just always snacking, and it was yeah.
So what is the serve? So again, thinking low 0 to 1 serves, medium 2 to 3, heavy 3+. And again, some of you may even need more than 3. This is just, again, a generalization. And for that more kind of individualized approach, that's when you actually do see a dietitian. But what is the serve? 1 slice of bread, half a bread roll, half a cup of cooked rice or pasta, or a medium piece of fruit. So how would your meals look different if you were to put this into play? So beef stir fry, you may have 0 cups. Look, I'd always probably suggest you have at least half a cup. But if you were, maybe thinking about body composition goals on a rest day, we may reduce it to 0. Or beef stir fry, you'd have 1 cup, and for a medium activity day. And then for a heavy activity day, we'd have those 3 portions, so that 1.5 cups of rice. And again, like I said, your portions could increase further depending on your energy needs.
Hey, Atlanta, you actually got a question, if you don't mind
Yeah,
answering. So it says, it's from Phoebe. So a lot of tournaments require the players to eat lunch halfway through. Do you recommend fast release carbs for that moment, or slow release?
Yeah, so I do have some slides on that later, but what I would suggest is, if we have, it depends on how much time you have. So if we've got, is this halfway, are you saying halfway through the tournament? Like, so we've got a match in the morning and then a match
Possibly, I think so.
In the afternoon. Yeah. So if we've got like 1 to 2 hours, we'd want something still pretty light but heavy on carbohydrates. So maybe like some sushi or a sandwich, something that's still pretty easy digested, not too much protein or fat, which is really going to slow down our digestion. If we have 3 to 4 hours, yes, we can go for that full kind of complete meal, thinking about protein, fats, carbs and vegetables. And if we've only got 30 to 60 minutes, that's when, we have to use those high GI carbs. So maybe a couple of honey sandwiches or something like that. Perfect. Roughly what a medium training day plate would look like. I think we'll kind of skip through because we've got a bit more to go through. So let's talk about protein. So protein, really important for muscle growth. So obviously through the production of additional muscle fibers. We also need to consider muscle repair. So through muscle protein synthesis to repair the micro tears caused by exercise, as well as muscle recovery. So reduce muscle soreness through rapid muscle repair. So again, talking about these micro tears, so every time you're exercising, little micro tears are occurring within the muscle. So this is when you start to feel really, tired after a session, or the next day you're getting that delayed onset muscle soreness. It's due to these little micro tears. So how do we prevent those, or not necessarily prevent those, but repair those tears really quickly? That's through consuming some protein. Very individual how much protein you will need, but roughly 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram. Again, depends on your requirements, but being consistent and frequent with your protein requirements is crucial. So we'll go into that now, of how much protein do you actually need. We'd be aiming for 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal and 20 grams per snack. Now, this is not 20 grams per snack necessarily in a tournament, for example, because if we don't have that time, at least kind of 3 hours between matches, we won't really be focusing on a big protein intake. That will come after. But again, what does 20 grams look like? It could be 3 eggs, 70 grams of cheese, 200 grams of Greek yogurt, or maybe a small tin of tuna. So just giving you a good visual there about how much you really do need per meal and snack. So meal timing, key on training days, also really key on tournament or match days as well. So pre-training, in an ideal world, we want you to have a regular balanced meal, including protein, carbs, and fat, 3 to 4 hours prior to your training. However, some of you may do really super early training, and you may not necessarily be able to get up at 3 a.m. in the morning. So we'll talk about how we can play around with that as well. So you may need some carbohydrates that digest pretty quickly, and not too much protein and fat, as they slow down digestion if you don't have the time. If you don't have the time, so you've got to get up super early for training, you know you're not going to be able to get in a really big meal before you, or at least an adequate meal before you start training, you can start bumping up your dinner the night before. So instead of those 3 serves we were talking about with that previous meal, so the grilled fish and yogurt, just adding an extra serve in there. So maybe a piece of fruit with dinner as well, just to bump up that glycogen, that stored fuel we have in our muscles, to get you on a good foot the next morning. Pre-training energy boost. So if you don't have that time to have, a proper breakfast before you get training, maybe just start with a light breakfast, and again, being carbohydrate based and more of that high GI carbohydrate. So it's nice and quickly digested. We're getting that fuel straight away, and we're being able to utilize it during the session. So some toast with jam, maybe some pikelets and honey, a ripe banana, maybe a fruit smoothie. Try not to add protein powders or nut butters into this smoothie, again, because the protein and the fats will really slow down that digestion and make you feel quite heavy on the court.
It's interesting to look at that as well. I know for me, personally, if you go back, it's for every tennis player, like I see chocolate milk on there, and I know obviously there's a lot of, I could not think of anything worse to have.
Yeah.
Bouncing around in my stomach before I'm about to play, because I think you sort of see every tennis player, because we move so much as well. It's bananas is one of the key things there that you just, I mean, again, it's something that hasn't. I don't think it's changed in the last 40 years in what people eat on the changeovers and before they play. But is there anything is this a personal preference that you think people should be looking for, or what would you suggest?
Yeah, I said, yeah,
it's so varied.
I find toast really easy with honey or jam. Again, especially if, mum and dad are taking you to training and you're even eating it in the car, like you're kind of jumping out of bed and getting into the car, you can eat toast in the car or a ripe banana. I also really like the fruit juice option. You can make kind of like a homemade sports drink. So you need to choose a juice which has no pulp. Again, the fiber will slow down the digestion. It needs to have at least 10 grams of carbs per 100 ml. So add 300 ml of juice, 200 ml of water, and a pinch of salt to get that hydration occurring nice and early. And that's your perfect kind of like homemade sports drink that you can make. That's a preference, because I know, like the milk for some people is just way too full on to digest, and it's easy, it's transportable, and again, getting some fluid in there, getting that hydration started as well.
Hey, Atlanta, in regards to your protein slides, obviously we're getting a lot of protein from meat, and I noticed in some dairy. So have you had to deal with a lot of players that either a vegan or vegetarian, where it becomes quite difficult for those types of sources to get those protein intakes?
Yeah, definitely. Quite a few vegetarian players, not as many vegans, so which is a lot easier, because we can still go for eggs and some dairy sources as well. But yes, mixing it up, getting those complete proteins in. So I don't know if all of you know, but they say chickpeas are high in protein, right? But they're actually not a complete protein. They don't have all the amino acids needed to build or create new muscle. You have to complement that with a grain source of protein to make sure that you're getting all those building blocks that you need. So these are some of the things that we do in education with vegetarian athletes to make sure that they're getting in sufficient protein.
And we've had a few people ask in the chat room about Nutella. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. Nutella's not too bad. It is definitely a little bit higher in fat, but I wouldn't say it's too excessive, and it's definitely high in sugar. So a little bit of Nutella on toast pre-training. You can tell your mum and dad I said that's okay.
Funny though, I know for me personally, it was a no-no. I know in Europe where you go to those continental breakfasts, you'd always have just the Nutella everywhere, and Yeah,
I think certainly when when some of the kids, they hear Nutella, they tend to take it to the extreme and say, you know what, I'm going to slather it up and layer it up.
Definitely.
But,
Yeah.
really,
And that's,
we're talking about a nice little small.
and the fat aspect, and that's why, you know, getting this pre-training, you know, your pre-training meal, it should become a bit of a routine. It's your meal, it's what works for you. You're not looking at Joe Blogs next door and going, oh, he's eating this and he's performing so well, that's what I need to have. It's completely individual. It's what you tolerate, what you digest as well. You know, some of us have different digestion issues, so we just need to consider that when choosing our best option. Cool. And if you wouldn't eat something normally, you're like, oh, I'm not going to eat anything, but if I get a little bit of Nutella, maybe I will have a slice of toast. I'd much prefer that. Hydration. So hydration is super important.
Sorry, I know you got it. This is a key one. This is something for me, which is massive.
Yes.
I agree.
Definitely. A lot of people do not consider their hydration appropriately, or they just kind of like take a swig randomly when they can. But water has many important roles in the body, and it's required to maintain blood volume and regulate our body temperature. And during exercise, the body cools itself by sweating. So ultimately, this results in a loss of body fluid, which if not replaced can lead to dehydration. Also, our sweat production or fluid loss increases with increasing temperature and humidity. And we need to consider this as, you know, as tennis players, you're often playing in really hot and humid conditions. So again, hydration, fluid, electrolytes, really, really important. But as this dehydration increases, there is a reduction in physical and mental performance. Again, this is going to not only affect your energy, but also your mental performance and ability to actually make those correct shots on the court. So again, something that we really need to consider. So, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, keep going. I'll let you finish. Obviously, I think it's a really important one. I just wanted to stress a point. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. So how do we check this? How do you make sure pre-training that you are hydrated? There are 3 things that you can look at: your weight, your thirst, and your urine color. So obviously, if you're super thirsty, then it's likely that you're dehydrated. Your weight, if you've jumped on the scales and you're a lot lighter than than usual, then yes, you're probably dehydrated. And your urine color is something we needed to take into consideration as well. So obviously looking for quite a light, kind of clear to very light yellow urine, that means that we are hydrated. If we are getting towards that really dark color, then we're starting to get dehydrated to extremely dehydrated, which can be really, really dangerous for your health. So you need to start drinking really quickly, and especially getting those electrolytes. So maybe considering drinks like Hydrolyte to fasten up the process.
Could you possibly over hydrate? Because I used to always, when I used to play, they had the biggest water bottles, and I know I can see a lot of the kids that come in here, they got these tiny little ones. I had this big one that's just made it a lot easier to be able to stay constantly hydrated all the time. Yes,
you can, and it's actually extremely dangerous overhydration. However, if you're playing a lot of tennis, you're sweating a lot, and as long as you're not drinking like liters upon liters upon liters, it's unlikely you're going to do it. But yes, you can have too much water, and essentially it kind of drowns out your body and puts all your electrolytes at a place, so you are at risk of things like dangerous things of collapse and heart issues. So yeah, you can have too much water. There is so much as too much.
I think it's a really good point, because I know, again, I remember I was in the AIS, and part of what they actually wanted to figure out was what was our sweat rate. So we actually did tests, all those sort of things to figure out to the absolute, because again, this is what we sort of touched on at the beginning, these little 1%ers that can actually add up to make a massive difference. I don't think this is a 1%. I think it's even bigger. I've had experiences where I was playing in Florida for the first time, my first sort of pro events in the States, and I didn't realize how over the course of 4 or 5 days, if you're not really recovering, I mean, it ended up for me in full body cramps where I was supposed to be taken to hospital, just collapsed on the ground. It was that severe. But what we used to do is, obviously, for one, really encouraged to have a decent sized water bottle. It was generally 2 liters, so we could actually measure what we were taking throughout. So if you knew you had to refill it and you refilled it and you'd have a look at the end, you had your 4 liters of water. But it was something to me that was taken really, really seriously, because again, we know what starts happening when you do start getting dehydrated, rather than just the odd ping in the calf and the cramp that can start setting in, how it can affect your decision making, how it can affect obviously how quick you process things. I mean, I'd love for you to really sort of stress this and really get the point across, because I still feel like this is one area that it's a controllable, and people don't really understand the importance of it.
Definitely, definitely. So not only can exercising in hot weather put extra stress on your body, but if you don't take care when exercising in the heat, you risk serious illness as well. So what you're talking about, Luke, heat cramps is the initial onset of dehydration. So obviously if you're cramping, you're not going to be getting to that ball as quickly as you need to. It's really going to start affecting your game. The next illness, it then goes to exercise-associated collapse, which sounds like you experienced also. The next tier is heat exhaustion. So when you're starting to feel nauseous, maybe even some visual problems, and also like cold, clammy skin. And then we have our very serious life-threatening condition of heat stroke. So it is crucial that you're not only drinking enough, but also keeping yourself cool. And this is when your body temperature gets above 40 degrees and you will need to be taken to hospital. So it's not only, the initial effects on your game, but also if you get to this point of heat stroke, recovering from that, or recovering even from heat exhaustion and trying to get back and play tournaments again, it's going to take you a while. So it's going to take you off the court for a lot longer than just that match. Paying attention to the warning signs: muscle cramps, nausea, vomiting, visual problems, confusion, irritability. Any of these, you really need to start getting that hydration occurring. You need to get those electrolytes in, so drinks like Hydrolyte. If you want that carb and electrolyte drink, you can have things like Gatorade and Powerade. Always good to have water, but also an electrolyte source as well. So maybe, a big 2-liter bottle of water, and do a 1-liter bottle of electrolytes as well. Practical cooling strategies. So again, trying to keep yourself cool, adding ice water to your bottles. And also, big thing, preparation. Be prepared. Don't just rock up to your match just going like, I'll go grab a bottle of water from the store, and maybe there is no store, and then you don't have any water to take on court. So bring a small esky, keep your water bottles nice and cool. Again, use your individual bottles so you can keep track of that fluid intake. Again, choosing those higher electrolyte fluids, maybe some cool towels around the neck. If you have the benefit of using a fan during a break, then try and use one, but I don't know how often you'd actually get that, be able to use something like that. On the court, snacks, we also have to make sure we're topping up our fuel. And again, we need that fast release energy. So some things to have in your tennis bag. And again, being prepared, have more snacks than you need, just in case you need that extra boost. So fruit, dried fruit, muesli bars, simple sandwiches, so honey or jam, sports drinks, and some gels to get that carbohydrate in for your performance as well. So post-training, we need to consider our recovery. We need to refuel, repair, rest, and rehydrate. Refueling, obviously topping up those carbohydrate stores. We've just used a lot of glycogen, and we need to get that glycogen topped up as soon as possible to start reducing that inflammation from exercise. So getting that in straight away. We need to repair, build that muscle tissue and repair those micro tears. Best window, 30 minutes straight after you've either trained or you've been in a match for enhanced recovery. So trying to get in 20 to 30 grams of protein straight away.
I think before you go on, that's one thing with pro players. You wouldn't see it, but behind the scenes where players basically, let's say the Australian Open, where they finish their match, they do their on-court press conference. You often see players that will literally go straight in from there. And again, when they've finished their on-court sort of little interview, a lot of the time when they go back behind the scenes, you'll see them, they'll actually go straight in and they'll be eating. They'll actually eat, because those press conferences for the bigger players can go for hours. And that's one of the things I think that people always get surprised about when you go behind the scenes. The professional players, they try to leave no stone unturned. And again, these little things, it can make such a big sort of compounds. It can make such a big impact, especially over a Grand Slam. But Yeah, I just thought it was one of those things behind the scenes where you just see all the players, you'll see them snacking, and then they walk in the press conference, they'll put it to the side and then jump straight in. So it's really, really important.
Yeah, and as soon as possible to really getting that recovery sorted, because especially if you're in a tournament, you need to get back on track straight away. Next day you want to be waking up fresh. If you're not getting that nutrition in as early as possible, then you're not going to be recovering as good as you can, and then you're not going to be playing as well as you could have the next day. Rehydrate, again, things we touched on: weight, urine, thirst. Thinking about those things, getting that fluid in. And speaking about this, body weight indicator is a really good way to see how much fluid you've lost. So weighing yourself if you can, and if you've got the ability to, either before or after training, before or after a match, and replenishing those losses. So if you lose 1 kilo, you need to replenish those losses by 150%, or just times that by 1.5. So you need 1.5 liters to rehydrate. You don't have to drink this straight away, but try and get it in as quickly as you can within about an hour to 2 hours. And rest is a big thing. I know a lot of younger kids love sitting up all night on TikTok, but trying to steer clear of that blue light, trying to get really good quality sleep, 7 to 8 hours, and avoiding any stimulants closer to bed, so things like caffeine. So what should you eat? Recovery through hydration. So straight away after exercise or training, you'll see a lot of people going for things like chocolate milks, or maybe even a protein shake with some fruit in it. But the best thing about a chocolate milk or a protein smoothie is the fact that we're ticking off a lot of those boxes. We're getting the carbs in, we're getting the protein in straight away, and we're getting fluid in as well. So we're making sure that we're having this nutritional fluid, which is giving us what we need to recover as soon as possible. And again, if you can, try and meet that 30-minute window. Some other high protein recovery snacks, things like YoPro. You can go for things like roasted chickpeas, some eggs, Up and Go protein, the energized variety because it's higher in protein, beef jerky, cottage cheese, or maybe even some homemade kind of protein balls as well. Again, pre-planning, thinking about taking this on the court and being able to keep it cool, and also taking with you for the day if you know that you're not going to have access to a fridge, bringing something like an ice brick with you as well. What this could look like on a plate: remember bulking up those carbohydrate serves at dinner if you don't have time to have that more balanced breakfast in the morning. Getting that pre-training breakfast energy boost, so something like a ripe banana before you jump on the court. In training, focusing on that hydration, the water, perhaps maybe some carbohydrate depending on how long you're on the court for. Post-training recovery, getting that in straight away, something like a protein smoothie, followed by a balanced lunch, and continuing roughly every 3 hours with those high protein snacks to make sure that the muscles are spending more time growing than they are breaking down. If you don't keep feeding the muscle, you're not going to get that adaptation. So match day, similar kind of principles. We still need the meal timing, strategic planning, and it's obviously different for everyone. Breakfast, as I spoke about, 2 to 4 hours prior, trying to get in more of a complete meal, maybe a porridge, maybe some muesli and yogurt, maybe even a sandwich. Again, making sure you're hydrated and not too much fat or fiber, because this can cause a bit of stomach upset. And familiar foods, this is the biggest thing. Do not try a new breakfast recipe on match day. Nerves, this can cause a big issue for what you can actually get in. And if you're used to nerves, then you may just have to have something liquid, which is a little bit easier to digest. So maybe a fruit smoothie, again, not adding protein powders into it probably, because again, just going to slow digestion too much, maybe a little bit too difficult for you to digest just before your match. Slow release carbs, again, can cause a little bit of an issue with digestion, but again, it's just finding the right meal for you and finding that right balance between slow and fast release carbs. Pre-match, high GI carb top up. If you're hungry an hour before the match, get some extra carbs in. Again, jam or honey sandwich, ripe banana, maybe a muesli bar, or even a gel. If you're not hungry, just try and go for something liquid or super easy to digest, like a fruit juice, or perhaps some lollies or easy fruit like grapes. During the match, again, high GI top-ups. So this is dependent. Generally, if we say you're playing over 90 minutes, you need 60 grams of carbs an hour. So a banana, for example, would provide about roughly 20 to 25 grams of carbs. And then maybe if you had a whole Gatorade as well, that provides around 36. So if you had both of those within the hour, then that would reach your 60. So over 90 minutes, roughly, we say get that 60 grams of carbs in. Between matches, if you've only got 30 to 60 minutes, you need either liquid carb options, which are easy to digest, or maybe some solid carb options, which easy to digest, but some of you may not be able to take in that solid option. So fruit bars and dried fruit within that 30 to 60 minute time. Although I would think most of you would have a little bit more time than that, but maybe not necessarily. 1 to 2 hours, again, we can have something.
Just before you push on there, again, there's probably a question that's really relative, but to answer that question, even at ATP level, if you're playing singles and doubles final, sometimes there's only a 30-minute break, even at tour level. So that's where you can have those really short breaks. But I guess, Anthony, really good question there as well. Should sports drinks have sugar or no sugar variants?
Yes, very good question, because it can be very confusing. You should be aiming for the sugar option unless you're eating your carb serves. So if you're kind of topping up with you prefer to kind of eat your carbohydrates, then yes, you can eat your carbs and then just choose a no sugar Powerade. Although I would say it's probably easy to just go for the sugar option. So automatically getting those carbs in, getting the electrolytes, and then you don't have to eat as much on top.
And just, I guess, if there's any parents like me, I mean, I know Anthony's young son's sort of 10 years of age. Would it be age dependent? Because I know if I get my kids too much sugar, obviously sometimes you can have some unintended.
Yeah, look, it can definitely age dependent. It depends, like 10 years old, do we want them having really sugary drinks? I think, we'd probably be going more for my fruit juice, homemade sports drink. So a bit of fruit juice, bit of water, and just a pinch of salt, rather than going for something like a Powerade or a Gatorade. But they definitely can have it as long as they're burning it and they're having it at the right times. It's just as long as they're not kind of sipping on it all day because they think they need to keep hydrating, that's not the time to have it. They should just be having regular water or Hydrolyte, which is a low sugar electrolyte alternative.
Yeah, and because I remember, it's probably a little bit unrelated, but I remember it was we did a nutrition in the AIS, and one of the things they told us was obviously about sports drinks, and one of the people spoke up. They literally said their partner was a dentist, and they said the worst teeth they ever saw was on triathletes, because they were constantly sipping power drinks and Powerades and sports drinks.
Yeah, the gels are the worst. The gels are super concentrated. I do a lot with triathletes, because they have to, and triathletes can push up to 90 grams of carbs per hour. So you can imagine how much they actually have to take in to perform their sports. So if they're not getting enough fluid in, or they're having those gels, big issue. So also making sure that you have a good oral hygiene, you're cleaning your teeth, you're flossing regularly and getting your checkups, because you may need to choose a different alternative, but I still generally say sports drinks are fine.
Yeah, because that was one of the things I know for me as a pro player. Sometimes I'd have the power bars, so those sort of things, but I would have banana, electrolyte, water, just at the end in that order when you sit down at the change events, to make sure you're refueling and also try to rinse that sugar out of my mouth. Sometimes when you do, obviously you're operating quite a high level, that sugar taste can really make it hard to breathe sometimes.
Definitely. And that's why I always say have your water and your electrolyte, or your sugar electrolyte drink. You're never just making sure you're drinking like sugary water or sugary electrolyte drink. You're also having your water as well. You really need to balance the two. Perfect. If we do have 1 to 2 hours, we can have slightly more substantial meals. So things like sushi, maybe a pasta salad. Again, not too much protein, so not a big whack of chicken or steak or anything in there. And again, not a little bit more fiber, but not going too crazy. So no kind of big whole grain breads. Again, nice and easily digested. 2 hours plus, we can get pretty much a whole meal in. So, you know, a good sized bowl of pasta, maybe some overnight oats, a tuna sandwich, to make sure we get that refuel occurring. Post-comp, again, thinking refuel, rebuild, rehydrate, and rest. We're getting in our carbohydrates, our vegetables, our protein, and also our small amount of fat. And remember that we had to get in that smoothie straight after within that 30 minutes, followed up by a meal like this. Let's talk quickly on supplements now. So supplements is a big question I always get asked from athletes. And do you need to have supplements? The answer is no, especially for adolescent athletes. I think too much focus is put on, you know, the benefit that these supplements could give you. But when you're an adolescent athlete, you're growing as an athlete, you're working on your skill, you're working on, you know, changing your body and building more muscle. And these supplements aren't necessarily going to give you that much benefit at the end of the day. And also 1 in 5 Australian supplements is contaminated with heavy metals or banned substances. So when you start getting to that phase where you may be drug tested, this is something you really need to think about. Do you want to risk it? Mm-hmm. If you are taking supplements, just make sure it's been tested. So it's HASTA certified, meaning that it's batch tested, or Informed Sports certified. And if you don't have these logos on the supplement you're taking, check the Sports Integrity Australia app, and they will tell you whether it's a safe supplement for you to take or not. What you can start doing today, increase your carbs to match your training volume, have a fluid and cooling strategy in place, refuel, repair, rehydrate, and rest. Why should you see a dietitian? Again, just thinking about more of that individualized plans, supporting things like gut health, body composition analysis, but also sometimes just that accountability and getting those better results. We are offering all Voyager players 50% off your initial dietitian consultation. So just quote Voyager seminar when you're doing your booking. And if you want to contact me directly, you can just email me at atlanta.m@precisionathletica.com. Or if you want to make a booking, you can just contact our head office and again, quote that Voyager seminar when you're doing your booking. Lastly, Jace, who we spoke to before, if any of you have questions about tennis performance and training, just contact Jace directly, and that's jason.o@precisionathletica.com.au. And that's it. That's all for today, guys. So do we have any questions?
Yeah, I think before, obviously, we do throw it open questions there. So what I'd say is if you do have any, jot some down. But I know, again, even Vera's obviously throwing me a couple of messages here. And I know it was one of the things that she did with her son, Ethan, was actually went across and did speak to him. That was one thing she said is, again, really well-rounded diet, really good things, but just said that even though she thought she was feeding him right, obviously wasn't quite, but the key thing wasn't feeding him enough. And that's one thing I know we're always trying to do, Jason, was bulk Ethan up and get him
get him stronger to be able to. Well, really, one of the things with Ethan is that we wanted to improve his physicality on the court. We knew it was such a big requirement for him to be able to stay in the standards of what the modern game's about. So we had to get him stronger, had to get him bigger. He wanted to get more free points out of his serve. So part of that was nutrition. And if we wanted him to train stronger in the gym, nutrition was the baseline for that. So
definitely. And it's something that so many people are getting wrong, unfortunately. They're putting everything into their training, and they've got the talent there too, but they're just not combining that with the adequate nutrition, which, like you keep saying, Luke, could get them to that next level.
Yeah. And I know, again, I'll come back to that concept. And here's Vera saying absolutely bonus, learning nutrition and getting it right. It's huge. And that's why I think it's obviously great you guys are offering that opportunity for people to come in and do it. Because again, my personal experience of this was I was 17 years of age, obviously grew up in Sydney, really started getting serious about my tennis, I actually jumped on a plane by myself and flew up to see the nutritionist for the Reds, the Queensland Reds, and went out there. And the first thing was, what I couldn't realize is it was the same sort of concept. I was actually trying to get bulk up. I couldn't believe how much they wanted me to eat, and that was the key thing. It was actually making sure I was getting enough in, rather than, again, because we work so hard, we do so many hours. I was literally I was in a deficit and I didn't realize it. And it was to the point where I had to eat so much at the beginning, I was actually throwing up on court because I was having such big, my food plan changed so much. But again, once you sort of get settled and you get into it, it can make such a big difference.
Definitely. I've seen people do the same. You guys have got such crazy schedules and you're on the court all the time. So trying to get that appropriate food in and have decent size meals, sometimes we have to fortify it with some extra foods, so you're not eating quite as big a volume, but you're getting that nutrition in the same meal. So some things that we have to work upon. But yeah, if you don't go for the right food choices, it's going to affect you on the court. And that could be having too much or having something too close to eating, which you start to feel a bit ill, or it could be just not getting the carbohydrate in there, so you don't have that stored fuel, you don't have that stored glycogen to work off.
Atlanta, with that, so I see a lot of players who are when they're starting to push their body to the limits, and they're starting to get these little niggles in their elbow, in their back, and their knee. And I look at it holistically, and I think to myself, if they fueled well and they were eating right, then their ability to perform on the court will be better. So they're not going to be able to put so much extra stress in their body. Is that something that you can explain or you can attest to?
Definitely. It's also that nutritional adequacy as well. So when I started on that Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, it's eating from those 5 food groups. It's not just getting the carbs and the protein in, it's eating from those 5 food groups, getting the veggies in, getting the dairy in, getting the whole grains in, getting the fruit in as well. So making sure we're meeting all our nutritional needs, so the vitamins and minerals we need. Certain vitamins and minerals really important for reducing inflammation in the body. Again, going to help us recover better. Also good for immune health, so we need to consider things like vitamin C and zinc, which I spoke about earlier. And also a really big one, which I really like, is omega-3 fatty acids, particularly from fish. I know not every kid eats fish. I would suggest 2 to 3 times a week. If they don't, you can get those omega-3 gummies, but make sure it's at least got 1,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA. Some of them not quite hitting it. And I know some of them won't really want fish oil capsules, but maybe trying to introduce some more fish into their diets would be good, because really good anti-inflammatory, and really good for mental health as well. So again, that mental clarity, needing to make decisions in games.
Cool.
Awesome. And I know we've crossed over. I mean, I think also too, what we're going to do is send out a PDF. So we actually do have a lot of those recommendations and guidelines there. So for everyone that has registered for this this webinar, we will send that out. So again, and probably on that note, unless there's any sort of final questions, but yeah, just wanted to thank obviously both Jason and Atlanta for your time tonight, your expertise. Again, can't stress enough the importance of this. And again, it is one of those controllables. I think that's one of the things I would always look at, is so often there's so many things that are out of our control, but this is one thing that can really make such an impact, not just to your tennis game, but also just your everyday life and your health and well-being. And yeah, so really appreciate both your time tonight. So on behalf of everyone, just want to say thank you. Thank you, guys.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Cool. You're welcome. And again, guys, from our academy guys, from tomorrow, I'd love to see you guys out there snacking away and making sure that we can get the most out of every session.
Yeah, well, I'll check in on that, Luke. So you're going to give me some feedback on how that's going, and I'll speak to some of those kids. If they're not doing it well, we'll go, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. All righty, guys. Thanks so much.